In the pursuit of a life well lived, there is no greater power than that of self-control. It is the cornerstone of virtue, the very foundation upon which a peaceful and resilient mind is built. In this world, where desires tug at us from every direction, it is easy to become a slave to our impulses, to be swept away by the currents of fleeting emotions. Yet the Stoic teaches us that true freedom lies not in the satisfaction of every whim, but in our ability to govern ourselves with reason and wisdom. Through the principles of Stoicism, we come to understand that self-control is not merely a skill, but a way of life. It is the art of mastering one's inner world, so that we may face the outer world with strength, clarity, and unshakable calm. This is not an easy path, for it requires both discipline and patience, but it is a path worth walking. For in mastering ourselves, we unlock the full potential of our existence. 1. The power of self-control in Stoicism. Self-control, in its purest form, is not simply a matter of resisting temptation. It is the foundation of all that we strive for in Stoicism. It is the ability to direct our thoughts, our actions, and our emotions according to reason and virtue, regardless of external circumstances. The Stoic view on self-control is rooted in the belief that we are not controlled by the events that happen to us, but by how we choose to respond to them. In this lesson, we will explore the profound power of self-control, its significance in the Stoic philosophy, and how it shapes our character. At the core of Stoic thought is the recognition that we cannot control the world around us, but we have absolute control over how we engage with it. The events that unfold in our lives, the people we encounter, the challenges we face, all lie outside our control. These external factors are impermanent, fleeting, and often unpredictable. Yet, despite this uncertainty, we possess the greatest power of all, the power to choose how we respond. This is the essence of self-control, the mastery over our inner reactions, our thoughts, and our desires. Consider for a moment the nature of a person who is driven by impulse. Such a person acts without thought, without reflection, and without awareness. They are at the mercy of their emotions, driven by their immediate desires, fears, and urges. In contrast, the Stoic who practices self-control is not led by fleeting impulses, but is guided by a steady and rational mind. They respond to the world not from a place of reactivity, but from a place of deliberate choice. The Stoics understood that self-control is not simply the ability to restrain our actions, but the ability to direct our energy toward what is truly important. Epictetus, the great Stoic philosopher, reminded us that we are responsible for our own actions, and our actions must align with virtue. It is not enough to simply avoid vice, we must actively pursue wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. In mastering self-control, we cultivate these virtues and make them the guiding force in our lives. Self-control begins with the mind. It is in our thoughts that the seeds of action are planted. The moment we feel an impulse, a desire, or a negative emotion, we must first examine it. Is this impulse aligned with our values? Is it a reaction to external forces, or does it come from within? By taking a step back and reflecting before we act, we can choose how to respond in a manner that reflects our highest principles. This is not to say that we suppress our emotions, but rather that we learn to engage with them in a conscious and measured way. Instead of allowing ourselves to be controlled by our desires or fears, we practice stepping back and using reason to guide our decisions. In Stoicism, the practice of self-control is deeply intertwined with the concept of virtue. The Stoic virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance serve as the compass that guides us toward a life of meaning and purpose. Self-control is the mechanism by which we maintain our adherence to these virtues, regardless of the challenges or temptations we may face. It is not a passive act of resisting what is wrong, but an active commitment to what is right. It requires the courage to do what is difficult, the wisdom to discern what is truly important, and the temperance to avoid excess in all things. To truly understand the power of self-control, we must also recognize its far-reaching impact. Self-control is not confined to isolated moments of restraint. It influences every aspect of our lives. It shapes our relationships, our work, and our sense of inner peace. A person who possesses self-control does not react to every slight or insult. They are not swayed by the opinions of others, nor do they seek validation from external sources. Their sense of worth is not dependent on external conditions, but is rooted in their own integrity and virtue. Furthermore, self-control allows us to cultivate resilience. In the face of adversity, a Stoic who practices self-control remains steadfast. They do not allow themselves to be overwhelmed by fear, anger, or frustration. Instead, they maintain a clear and steady mind focused on what is within their control. When challenges arise, they view them as opportunities for growth, understanding that each obstacle is an invitation to strengthen their character and refine their practice of self-control. It is important to note that self-control is not about perfection. It is not about never making mistakes or always acting in accordance with virtue. Rather, it is about striving for consistency and growth. The Stoics understood that we are fallible human beings, and the practice of self-control is an ongoing journey. We will falter at times, we will give in to temptation, and we will make errors in judgment. But this is not a reason to despair. Instead, it is an opportunity to learn, to reflect, and to return to the path of virtue with renewed determination. In every moment we are presented with a choice. Will we be governed by our impulses, or will we choose to exercise self-control and live according to our highest values? The power of self-control is the power to shape our lives, to determine who we are and who we will become. It is the key to unlocking a life of meaning, purpose, and inner peace. And it is a power that is always within our grasp, ready to be claimed by those who are willing to embrace the Stoic path of wisdom and discipline. Let us therefore begin with the understanding that self-control is not merely a skill to be developed, but a way of life to be embodied. It is the practice of remaining steadfast in the face of temptation, of responding with reason and virtue, of choosing to align our actions with our highest ideals. In mastering self-control, we unlock the door to true freedom, the freedom to live a life of integrity, purpose, and lasting peace. 2. Understanding the nature of desire. Desire is a force that shapes much of our lives, yet how we respond to it determines our peace and wisdom. The Stoic view on desire is not to eliminate it completely, but to understand its nature, to see it for what it is, and to master it. Desire, in its essence, is neither good nor bad. It is simply a natural impulse, a yearning for something beyond our immediate grasp. Yet, when unchecked, it has the potential to dominate our thoughts, influence our actions, and lead us astray. To master self-control, we must first understand the nature of desire, how it operates within us, and how it can either be a force for good or a source of suffering. The first step in understanding desire is to recognize that not all desires are created equal. There are two types of desires, those that align with nature and virtue, and those that are rooted in external, fleeting circumstances. The first type, virtuous desires, are those that seek harmony with nature and contribute to our well-being. They are desires for wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, desires that help us cultivate virtue and live a life of purpose. The second type, irrational desires, are those that arise from external influences, such as the desire for wealth, fame, or pleasure. These desires are often based on an illusion of fulfillment, promising happiness but never delivering lasting contentment. The Stoic teaches us that our natural desires, those in alignment with virtue, are to be embraced and cultivated. It is only when desire seeks to fulfill a need that is not true to our nature, that is, when it stems from the illusions of external goods, that it becomes dangerous. The philosopher Epictetus once said, "If you wish to be rich, do not add to your money, but subtract from your desire." This profound wisdom reminds us that it is not the acquisition of things that leads to happiness, but the control of our desires for things that do not contribute to our true well-being. Consider the example of material wealth. Society often teaches us that to be wealthy is to be successful, to be powerful, and to be happy. Yet, when we examine this desire through the lens of Stoicism, we begin to see its flaws. The desire for wealth is based on the external, on things that are outside of our control. Wealth can be gained, but it can also be lost. And when wealth becomes the object of our desire, we attach our happiness to something fragile and fleeting. The Stoic would ask, what is the true source of happiness? Is it wealth, or is it our ability to live in accordance with nature, to cultivate virtue, and to exercise self-control? The Stoics believe that desire for external things, such as wealth or pleasure, is not inherently wrong. It is our attachment to these things, our belief that they will bring us lasting happiness, that leads us astray. If we can learn to desire only those things that align with our inner values, things like wisdom, integrity, and peace, then we find a true source of contentment. In this way, we can cultivate desires that enrich our lives rather than those that distract us or lead to frustration. Desire, when uncontrolled, can cause turmoil in our lives. It becomes a force that drives us relentlessly toward things that ultimately do not satisfy. The more we pursue fleeting pleasures or material possessions, the more we find ourselves in an endless cycle of wanting, acquiring, and then desiring more. The Stoic teaches us that true freedom comes not from the satisfaction of our desires, but from the mastery over them. To desire less, to want only that which is necessary and virtuous, is to free ourselves from the chains of want and to find contentment in simplicity. One of the key practices in Stoicism is the exercise of premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This involves mentally preparing ourselves for the loss of what we desire, understanding that all things are temporary and that nothing external can bring us lasting happiness. By contemplating the loss of things we hold dear, we begin to detach ourselves from the unhealthy attachment to them. This does not mean that we become indifferent or apathetic to the things we enjoy, but that we recognize their impermanence and place them in their proper perspective. We learn to enjoy them without being enslaved by them. Moreover, the Stoic view on desire is intricately connected with the idea of amor fati, the love of fate. This concept teaches us to embrace whatever happens in our lives, including the things we desire but do not obtain. To love one's fate is to accept life as it comes, without resentment or frustration, and to see every challenge as an opportunity for growth. When we release the need to control outcomes, we begin to see that our desires are not the ultimate source of happiness. Instead, our peace comes from accepting the flow of life, from mastering our internal state, and from finding contentment in what is, rather than what could be. To master self-control, we must also be willing to scrutinize our desires regularly. It is easy to become swept up in the currents of societal expectations or personal cravings. Yet, the Stoic must constantly ask themselves, is this desire aligned with virtue? Does it serve my true well-being? Is it in harmony with nature? By examining our desires with honesty and clarity, we become better equipped to discern which ones are worthy of pursuit and which ones are mere distractions. As we examine desire, we must remember that the Stoic goal is not to suppress all desires, but to refine them. It is not about rejecting all pleasures or denying ourselves all comfort. It is about developing the discernment to choose wisely, to desire only what is good and virtuous, and to let go of those desires that lead us astray. This requires great practice and self-awareness, as desires are often subtle and insidious. What may begin as a harmless longing for a new possession or a fleeting pleasure can quickly become an obsession if left unchecked. The Stoic response to desire is not one of denial or suppression, but one of understanding and mastery. The more we practice this, the more we come to realize that we are not defined by our desires. We are defined by our ability to choose how we respond to them. Through the wisdom of Stoicism, we learn to transform desire from a force that controls us into a tool that we control. When we master our desires, we unlock the true power of self-control and begin to live in accordance with nature, aligned with virtue, and at peace with ourselves. 3. recognizing what you can control. The fundamental teaching of Stoicism is the distinction between what is within our control and what is not. This simple yet profound insight lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy and is the key to mastering self-control. So much of our suffering, our anxiety, and our frustration arises from the failure to recognize this distinction. We waste endless energy on things beyond our control, and in doing so, we rob ourselves of the peace and tranquility that come from focusing on what we can actually influence. To live a Stoic life is to understand that we are responsible only for our own actions, thoughts, and judgments. Everything else, the opinions of others, the outcomes of our efforts, the actions of the world around us, lies outside our sphere of influence. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus made this distinction clear when he said, "Some things are up to us and some things are not." This powerful statement is not just a call for resignation, but a directive for action. The things that are within our control are our thoughts, our actions, our judgments, and our responses to external events. These are the areas in which we have the power to choose, to act in accordance with virtue, and to cultivate our character. Everything else, from the weather to the behavior of others to the course of events in the world, is beyond our control. To focus on that which we cannot change is to invite unnecessary stress and dissatisfaction into our lives. Recognizing what you can control begins with a clear understanding of yourself. You have control over your own mind, your thoughts, your attitudes, and your judgments. This is the realm where your true power lies. Your ability to choose how you respond to external events, how you interpret situations, and how you shape your beliefs, thoughts, and actions is where you hold dominion. The Stoics encourage us to turn our attention inward, to take full responsibility for our inner world, and to understand that this is the only place where true change can happen. Consider how often we fall into the trap of trying to control things beyond our reach. We obsess over the opinions of others, worrying about what they think of us or how they perceive our actions. We attempt to manipulate situations to produce certain outcomes, thinking that by sheer force of will, we can make the world bend to our desires. We fret over the future, constantly speculating about what might happen, and we become anxious about things that have not yet occurred, all because we fail to recognize that the future is beyond our control. We think we can control the actions of others, that we can shape their thoughts, force them to agree with us, or act in ways that benefit us. But the truth is, these things are not in our power. Once we recognize the limits of our control, we begin to free ourselves from the endless cycle of worry and frustration. The Stoics teach us that our primary focus should be on our own responses to the world around us, not on the external world itself. We cannot control how others behave or what happens in the world, but we can control how we respond to them. We can choose to remain calm in the face of insult, to act with integrity despite the actions of others, and to maintain our equanimity when faced with adversity. This is where true self-control is born. When we focus on what we can control, our thoughts, our actions, and our attitudes, we no longer waste energy on things beyond our influence. We learn to detach ourselves from the need for external validation and the desire for outcomes that serve our interests. Instead, we cultivate inner strength and resilience, knowing that no matter what happens outside of us, we have the power to respond in a way that aligns with our values. To master self-control, we must also learn to recognize the role of judgment in shaping our experiences. It is not the events themselves that determine our peace of mind, but our judgments about them. A person may face the same challenge as another, yet one may be filled with anger and frustration, while the other remains calm and composed. This difference is not due to the external event, but to the internal judgments made about it. If we can change our judgments, if we can see every challenge as an opportunity for growth and for every difficulty as a lesson in resilience, then we gain the power to turn any circumstance to our advantage. This is the key to Stoic resilience. While we cannot control the events of the world, we can control how we perceive them. We can choose to view adversity as something that builds our character, as an opportunity to practice patience, courage, and self-discipline. We can choose to see the loss of material wealth not as a tragedy, but as a reminder of the impermanence of external goods. In this way, the Stoic teaches us to embrace the unpredictability of life and to face it with an attitude of acceptance and calm. Understanding what is within our control also means accepting that there will be times when things do not go as planned, when the world does not cooperate with our desires. In these moments, the Stoic response is not to fight against reality, but to align ourselves with it. We must accept what comes, not as something to be feared or resisted, but as part of the natural order of things. To struggle against what cannot be changed is to waste energy on the futile. Instead, we must embrace what is, and in doing so, we gain the power to act with grace and composure. Let us take the example of a person facing a difficult situation at work. Perhaps they are passed over for a promotion or criticized by their boss. In such a scenario, the Stoic does not react with bitterness, anger, or resentment. Instead, they focus on what is within their control, their response to the situation. They can choose to maintain their dignity, to act with professionalism, to use the criticism as an opportunity for self-improvement. They can choose to focus on their own growth and not be consumed by the actions of others. In this way, they demonstrate true self-control, for they are not governed by external circumstances, but by their internal commitment to virtue. The practice of recognizing what you can control is a constant exercise in mindfulness and self-awareness. It requires a clear understanding of where your responsibilities lie and where they do not. It requires the wisdom to let go of the illusion of control over external events and to focus your energy on what truly matters, your own character and your own actions. It is through this practice that we begin to cultivate peace of mind, for we no longer waste time and energy on things that are beyond our reach. We can face the world with clarity, confidence, and the unshakable knowledge that no matter what happens, we are in control of how we respond. The Stoic path is one of deliberate action and focused energy. We must always ask ourselves, what can I control in this situation? And once we have answered that question, we must direct all our attention and effort toward those areas where we can make a difference. In doing so, we embrace the true power of self-control, for we are no longer slaves to the whims of fate but masters of our own responses. 4. The role of emotions in self-control. Emotions are often seen as something beyond our control, as forces that arise within us in response to external stimuli. They can seem overwhelming and all-consuming, driving our actions in ways we later regret. Yet the Stoic approach to emotions is not one of suppression or denial, but one of understanding and management. In this lesson, we will explore the Stoic view on emotions, how they influence our behavior, and how we can cultivate self-control by mastering our emotional responses. The Stoics did not advocate for the eradication of emotions, but rather for the understanding and proper management of them. Emotions in and of themselves are natural responses to the world around us. They are neither inherently good nor bad, but the way we engage with them determines their impact on our lives. For the Stoic, the key is not to be ruled by emotions, but to recognize them for what they are: temporary reactions to external events, and to choose how to respond with reason and virtue. Epictetus taught that it is not the events themselves that cause us distress, but our judgments about them. For example, imagine you are insulted by someone at work. The immediate emotional response might be anger or resentment. However, this reaction is not caused by the insult itself, but by your judgment that the insult is unjust or that you have been wronged. The Stoic approach would be to step back and question that judgment. Is the insult truly harmful? Is it worth allowing it to disturb your peace? By examining our judgments, we can choose to let go of the emotional reaction and maintain our composure. One of the primary reasons that emotions can have such a strong influence on our behavior is because they are often linked to our desires and attachments. We are emotionally invested in things, whether it is our reputation, our possessions, or our relationships, and when these things are threatened or challenged, we react with strong emotions. The Stoic recognizes that these attachments are often the root cause of emotional turmoil. When we attach our sense of worth to external things, we give them power over us. If these things are taken away, we experience distress. But when we detach ourselves from the need for validation from outside sources, we free ourselves from the emotional volatility that comes with such attachments. The Stoics encouraged us to practice apatheia, a state of being where we are not swayed by the fluctuations of emotions. Apatheia is not the suppression of emotions, but the cultivation of equanimity, the ability to remain calm and steady in the face of life's challenges. This is achieved through the practice of mindfulness and self-awareness. When we feel a strong emotion arising, we do not act impulsively or reactively. Instead, we pause, reflect, and consider whether the emotion is serving us or leading us astray. Consider the example of fear. Fear is a powerful emotion that can paralyze us, preventing us from acting in accordance with our values and goals. The Stoic would ask, what is it that I fear? Is it something that is within my control? Or is it something external that I cannot change? By recognizing the nature of fear and its sources, we can begin to detach from it. The Stoic understands that fear is often irrational. It is based on things that may never happen or on outcomes that lie beyond our control. When we learn to recognize the irrationality of fear, we gain the power to move forward despite it. We are no longer slaves to our emotional responses, but can act with clarity and purpose. Similarly, anger is another emotion that can lead us astray. Anger arises when we feel wronged or when our expectations are not met. But just as with fear, anger is often based on misguided judgments. The Stoic response to anger is to step back and examine the situation rationally. Is the offense truly significant? Is it something that warrants a response? Or is it merely a product of our own desires and expectations? By questioning the validity of our emotional responses, we regain control and choose a path of calm and reason. In addition to fear and anger, there are other emotions such as envy, jealousy, and sorrow that can disrupt our peace. These emotions are often rooted in comparisons to others or in the attachment to things that are beyond our control. The Stoic response is to focus on our own actions and inner virtues rather than comparing ourselves to others. By learning to detach from the need for external validation and approval, we can reduce the impact of these emotions on our lives. Mastering our emotional responses is a lifelong practice, one that requires constant vigilance and self-reflection. The key to this practice is to understand that emotions are not facts, they are temporary responses to the world around us. They do not define who we are, nor do they dictate our actions unless we allow them to. By recognizing the impermanence of emotions and by aligning our responses with our rational minds, we free ourselves from the tyranny of emotion. The Stoic practice of self-control, then, is not about rejecting emotions but about transforming them. Instead of being swept away by the storm of emotions, we learn to weather them with grace and resilience. We choose to act according to reason, to make decisions based on virtue, not on fleeting feelings. By practicing self-awareness, detachment, and rational reflection, we gain the ability to control our emotional responses and to live in harmony with our inner values. This mastery over emotion is not a one-time achievement, but an ongoing process. Each moment offers a new opportunity to practice self-control and emotional discipline. When we feel a strong emotion arise, we have the choice to pause, reflect, and choose our response. The more we practice this, the more we strengthen our ability to maintain our equanimity in the face of life's challenges. In the end, the Stoic approach to emotions is a call to embrace our humanity without being enslaved by it. It is an invitation to live a life of calm and composure, to respond to life with wisdom and virtue, and to cultivate the self-control that allows us to navigate the ups and downs of life with dignity and peace. Through this mastery of emotion, We become not only more resilient, but more fully alive, capable of experiencing life's joys without becoming overwhelmed by its trials. 5. The power of reflection in building self-control. Reflection is one of the most powerful tools a Stoic can use to build self-control. It is through deliberate reflection that we learn to understand our actions, emotions, and thoughts, and in doing so, we gain the ability to make better choices moving forward. Without reflection, we are like a ship adrift on the sea, carried by the winds of circumstances and emotions. But through the practice of reflection, we become the captains of our own lives, steering ourselves toward virtue and self-discipline. This lesson will explore the importance of reflection in the Stoic life, how to integrate it into daily practice, and the profound impact it can have on our ability to control our semblances and shape our character. The first step in reflection is to understand that it is not a passive activity. It is not merely about thinking back on the events of the day, but about engaging in a process of self-examination and self-correction. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Reflection allows us to look at our obstacles, our failures, and our challenges as opportunities to grow. It teaches us to see our mistakes not as reasons for guilt or regret, but as valuable lessons that can guide us toward greater wisdom and self-control. At the end of each day, a Stoic should ask themselves, how have I acted today? What was in my control and how did I respond? Where did I falter? Where did I succeed? By reflecting on our actions, we begin to understand our own tendencies, weaknesses, and strengths. We recognize patterns in our behavior and identify areas where we need to exercise greater self-discipline. Reflection helps us avoid repeating the same mistakes and gives us the clarity to make more conscious, intentional choices in the future. One of the primary benefits of reflection is that it allows us to examine our emotional responses to situations. When we act impulsively or react emotionally, it is easy to forget the role that our own judgments play in shaping those emotions. Reflection helps us take a step back and analyze our responses more objectively. Why did we become angry in that situation? What assumptions were we making? Were we reacting to external events or to our own internal desires and attachments? By reflecting on our emotions, we gain insight into their root causes, and this understanding allows us to manage them more effectively. For example, imagine that you became frustrated in a meeting when someone disagreed with your point of view. Afterward, through reflection, you might realize that your anger was not caused by the disagreement itself, but by your desire to be validated or recognized. This recognition allows you to detach from the need for external approval, and in the future, you can choose to respond with calmness and reason rather than being swept away by your emotions. Reflection also teaches us to evaluate our actions in terms of virtue. The Stoics believed that the only true good is virtue, and the only true evil is vice. Therefore, at the end of each day, we should ask ourselves whether our actions were in line with the four cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Did we act with wisdom in our decisions? Did we have the courage to do what was right, even in the face of difficulty? Did we treat others with fairness and justice? Did we practice moderation and restraint in our desires? By examining our actions through the lens of virtue, we can identify areas where we have succeeded and areas where we need to improve. Reflecting on our behavior also helps us to cultivate gratitude. When we take the time to review our day, we often realize that there is much to be grateful for, even in the midst of challenges. Gratitude is an essential aspect of Stoicism, as it allows us to focus on what is within our control and to appreciate the good that already exists in our lives. By reflecting on the things we are grateful for, we shift our focus away from what we lack and towards what we have, which fosters a sense of contentment and peace. The practice of daily reflection is not about dwelling on our shortcomings or ruminating on our failures. It is about learning from our experiences, understanding our own nature, and striving to be better tomorrow than we were today. The Stoic philosopher Seneca advised, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Reflection is the key to mastering ourselves, for it allows us to recognize where we have fallen short and to make the necessary changes to align our actions with our highest values. In addition to daily reflection, the Stoics should also engage in periodic, deeper reflection, where we consider the larger course of our lives. Are we living in accordance with our principles? Are we advancing toward the goals we have set for ourselves? Reflection helps us to evaluate the direction of our lives, to assess whether we are on the path to virtue, and to make adjustments if necessary. Just as a ship captain must periodically check the course of the ship to ensure it is headed in the right direction, so too must we regularly examine the course of our lives to ensure we are living with purpose and intention. Reflection also helps us cultivate patience. In a world that often encourages instant gratification, we can easily become frustrated when progress is slow or when we face setbacks. However, through reflection, we can see that true progress is made not through immediate results but through consistent effort and perseverance. The Stoic understands that the journey to self-mastery is long and that success comes through gradual, incremental improvements. By reflecting on our growth, we gain the patience and resilience to continue on our path, no matter how slow or difficult it may seem. Another critical aspect of reflection is its role in cultivating self-compassion. We are often our own harshest critics, beating ourselves up for our mistakes or failures. But Stoicism teaches us to view ourselves with understanding and kindness. We must recognize that we are human and that we will make mistakes. Reflection allows us to approach our shortcomings with a spirit of growth rather than self-punishment. It is through this compassionate self-reflection that we can forgive ourselves, learn from our errors, and continue our pursuit of virtue without being bogged down by guilt or shame. Reflection also provides us with the opportunity to celebrate our successes, no matter how small they may seem. In our fast-paced world, it is easy to overlook the progress we have made, focusing instead on what remains to be done. But by reflecting on our actions, we can recognize the positive steps we have taken, the moments when we acted with integrity or self-control, and the progress we have made toward our goals. Celebrating these successes, no matter how modest, reinforces our commitment to self-mastery and motivates us to continue on our path. To incorporate reflection into your daily life, begin by setting aside time at the end of each day to review your actions, thoughts, and emotions. Ask yourself what went well, where you could have improved, and what lessons you can take from the day. Write down your reflections in a journal, as this process helps to solidify your insights and provides a record of your growth. Over time, you will find that reflection becomes an integral part of your life, a practice that deepens your understanding of yourself and strengthens your ability to exercise self-control. The power of reflection lies not in the act of looking back, but in the act of using that reflection to shape a better future. It is through this process that we build the foundation for lasting self-control, making decisions grounded in wisdom, virtue, and a clear understanding of ourselves. By committing to daily and periodic reflection, we take responsibility for our actions and our growth, continually striving to be better, more self-disciplined, and more aligned with our true purpose. 6. The importance of discipline in cultivating self-control. Discipline is the bedrock upon which self-control is built. It is the practice of consistently choosing what is best over what is easy, of pursuing long-term goals over fleeting pleasures, and of aligning our actions with our values rather than with our impulses. Without discipline, we are at the mercy of our desires, our emotions, and external circumstances, forever chasing after satisfaction without ever achieving true contentment. For the Stoic, discipline is not an external force, but an inner strength, a decision made each day to act in accordance with reason and virtue. In this lesson, we will explore why discipline is essential for self-control, how to cultivate it, and how to and how it can transform our lives. Discipline, according to the Stoics, is the act of consistently doing what we know is right, regardless of the external challenges we face or the internal urges that seek to divert us. It is the commitment to act in alignment with our rational mind, even when the world around us offers distractions or temptations. Epictetus taught that we must discipline our minds, shaping them to act in accordance with virtue, rather than allowing them to be swayed by the passions and desires that lead us astray. Discipline is not a matter of sheer willpower or force. It is the steady application of wisdom and self-control in every aspect of our lives. The Stoics recognize that human beings are prone to desires and distractions. We are naturally inclined toward comfort, pleasure, and convenience, and we often find ourselves seeking immediate gratification rather than enduring the discomfort that leads to long-term fulfillment. Yet, as Epictetus pointed out, no man is free who is not master of himself. True freedom does not come from external circumstances or the absence of challenges, but from the ability to exercise discipline and control over our own actions. It is through discipline that we achieve the freedom to live in accordance with our highest values and to pursue our goals with clarity and purpose. In practice, discipline requires the ability to delay gratification, to make choices that are uncomfortable in the moment but beneficial in the long run. It is about recognizing that the pursuit of virtue, wisdom, and self-mastery often requires sacrifice and hard work. For example, consider the discipline required to maintain physical health. It is far easier to indulge in unhealthy habits, eating junk food, avoiding exercise, and neglecting our well-being than it is to follow a disciplined routine of healthy living. Yet it is through discipline that we build the strength and resilience necessary to live a long and fulfilling life. Similarly, discipline is essential in the pursuit of knowledge. It is not enough to simply wish to become wiser. We must commit to the daily practice of learning, reading, reflecting, and applying the lessons of philosophy and life. The Stoics were lifelong students, constantly striving to improve themselves through reflection and study. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, in that it stands ready to meet onslaughts, and is not apt to fall." Discipline enables us to remain steady and focused on our pursuit of wisdom, even in the face of adversity and distraction. Discipline also requires the courage to say no, to resist the allure of distractions, temptations, and indulgences that do not serve our greater purpose. It is easy to succumb to the pleasures of the moment, whether they are material, emotional, or psychological. But the disciplined person understands that indulgence in these fleeting pleasures only weakens their self-control and prevents them from living a life of meaning and purpose. The Stoic does not deny themselves all pleasures, but chooses to indulge in those that are in alignment with virtue and wisdom, while resisting those that lead to excess, distraction, or vice. To cultivate discipline, the Stoics recommend the practice of ascesis, which refers to the training or exercise of the soul. Just as a soldier trains for battle, we must train ourselves to act with discipline and self-control. This requires regular practice and intentional effort, for discipline is not something that happens overnight. It is the result of consistent, focused action over time. The Stoics understood that this practice is an ongoing process, not a final destination. We must continually strive to strengthen our discipline, making it a habit that shapes every aspect of our lives.